Asking that people direct questions to the email addresses that we'll provide at the end of the presentation. And we'll also send out a sign-up sheet for ways to get involved, and you can ask questions through us there as well.
To be able to get our emails, please go to Action Network RAICES, and that is how you can get email updates and how to find out further information on how to volunteer with us.
All right, everyone. So welcome. We are RAICES. We are the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. We started in the 1980s in the sanctuary movement when we started to see many, many people coming to our southern border seeking asylum from civil war and violence in Central America. We have offices all over Texas, in Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, Karnes City, Corpus Christi, and in Houston. Some of our two big projects right now that you may have heard of are our Bond Fund and our LEAF project. These are directly aimed at getting families back together. The Bond Fund specifically is to pay for people's bonds who are in immigrant detention. So a lot of people who've been separated from their families, the adults go to an adult detention facility, and then we are going to be able to hire a lot of lawyers, make motions for bonds, and then hopefully they'll be granted and we'll be able to pay the bonds. And with everybody's support, that's not just now or for the next few weeks, it's going to be for years to come. Our other major project is the LEAF project, and that is the Legal Education and Advocacy Fund. And that is for universal representation for unaccompanied children. And so that's children who've been separated from their caregivers and they're being held, and so that we can continue to get them universal representation. So I'm going to talk about the people we work with. We are mostly working with people who are being detained upon crossing the southern border. So since we're in South Texas, many of these are women and children who are being held in the family detention centers in Dilley and in Karnes City. There are many, many factors of forced migration, and most everyone who goes through the asylum process in the family detention centers establishes a credible fear of returning to their country and receives a notice to appear before an immigration judge when they're released. And some of the causes for leaving, one of the biggest ones is violence against women. And so femicide in the Northern Triangle of Central America is the murder of women or girls because they are female. And 3 of the top 5 countries for femicide are in the Northern Triangle, and 98% of those cases of femicide go unprosecuted. And so that's a major reason why people are showing up to our southern border and seeking asylum, and many of the folks we work with come for that reason. So in Texas, there are more people detained than in the next 3 states combined. And many of those are all centered around San Antonio. And so we are uniquely positioned in San Antonio to work with everybody who is being released out of those detention centers. And some of the biggest ones that we see are being released from Dilley and Karnes City, which are both about an hour away from San Antonio. And we see about 50 to 60 people a day who are released directly to the Greyhound bus station here in San Antonio. And that's really the root of our project. So here is a map of the Greyhound bus system, and you can see in the bottom, everything kind of funnels out from San Antonio. And so we have a major outreach project going on in the San Antonio bus station, and we are going to be able to expand into the San Antonio airport, where we're hoping to talk to everybody who's being released from detention into these transportation hubs. So our bus station project has a few important aspects to it. One of them is information gathering, so we can get a good idea of who is being released and who's coming to the bus station. And then we are doing legal orientations for folks, and then we are doing referrals. And the referral piece is where a lot of you all who have expressed interest in volunteering from your communities all over the country, that's where we're hoping to establish partnerships and be able to provide volunteer opportunities for you. So the two goals of our bus station projects, like I said, one of them is data collection and then the dissemination. So we want to know exactly where people are going and what they're going with, what kind of case they might have, what are the needs in their immigration case legally and also socially. And we also want to see what kind of human rights issues are going on, what sort of family separation issues are going on, so we can kind of best be able to respond to all of that. And we need to track that data and share it with everybody else. The second goal is to provide quality pro bono legal information and services. And so we are advising people of their rights and also of their responsibilities, of the required next steps that everybody has to take to continue with their asylum claim. So at the bus station, we do a ton of collaboration. We work closely with the San Antonio Interfaith Welcome Coalition, who have been in the San Antonio bus station for years. They go every day and they provide humanitarian and logistical assistance. One of their big projects is a backpack project where they provide backpacks with diapers and tampons and blankets and food and other supplies that people might need and run short on during a bus journey that might last 2 or 3 days. They also help with logistical assistance, and that's a really important piece. And so they welcome everybody who's being released from detention into the bus station. They go over their tickets and they go over their itinerary, and they write down which transfers people will have to make and really make sure that people aren't missing their buses and missing their transfers. We also have established strong relationships with Greyhound staff, and the Interfaith Welcome Coalition has done an excellent job of that and being able to kind of facilitate our work with people in the bus station. And we also hope to collaborate strongly with each of you who we're going to be providing referrals to so that we can get people legal and social, medical, educational, all kinds of supports once they hit the ground. And then we're going to be doing robust documenting and reporting of all of that. So a little bit about the legal orientation that we provide. So people come in generally with a big stack of paperwork that can be hard to decipher for a lawyer. It can be hard to decipher for a non-lawyer, and it can be really hard to decipher if you've never had any contact with any system in the United States. So some of the immediate responsibilities that people have are these. People need to go to their first ICE check-in and then the check-ins after that. And most people are provided with the date and time and the location of their first check-in, but that's not always the case. People also need to be able to go to their asylum court, their court hearing. And for that, they need to call what is the EOIR hotline, which is a 1-800 number that is connected to a machine that after entering your case number and entering some other information, the machine will tell you when you have your first court date. You also need to file your asylum application, which is the I-589, within 1 year. And we advise people on all of that. And we also are hoping to provide people opportunities to accompany folks to check-ins and also to that court date, and also help people call that 1-800 number. We also go over the ICE detainee locator, which is a website that goes into ICE's system and can be used to locate people who are detained. It doesn't work all of the time. It requires exact spellings, and sometimes ICE doesn't record people's names the way that they're written. And so it's works not all of the time, but it can be a good way to find people if they're in detention. We also go over the change of address forms, which is really important because the government will be notifying people of their next hearings and their next appointments via mail. And so people need to have their correct mailing addresses for the government in order to know when their next hearing or check-in or whatever appointment is. And it's really important that people know when their next appointments are, because if they don't, they can risk dangerous consequences, including orders of deportation.
And so this is where where you come in. So the reason why we were giving you information about RAICES and also about the bus project, because that is the first step that you will see where immigrant families or asylum-seeking families start off after they have been released. And so our goal here today is to try to link you in your communities once asylum-seeking families are out in your community, and how you can help them. We currently already have partner organizations in Charlotte, Atlanta, Kansas City, Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, Miami, and Boston. I apologize, Miami is not on there. And so some of the volunteer opportunities are give light to a little bit of the context that Nate was saying. Once their life, once they are released, is very problematic sometimes, and issues do arise with unforeseeable events. One of the ways that you can help out is through accompaniment. And the reason for accompaniment is to show that you are not alone and they are not alone, to be able to wait for their appointments during that time. And to give a light on what an ICE or an ISAP appointment is that sometimes an asylum-seeking family gets released from detention and they are placed with ankle monitors. These ankle monitors are kept so they can be the government can keep track of them and ensure that they are not at a flight risk while your case is being adjudicated. But the heavy part about these ICE appointments is that they are almost every 2 weeks, and sometimes they are over 20 to 30 miles away from where they are currently residing. So being able to just sit with them while they are waiting for their appointment, it sounds like you don't do much, but trust me when I say the emotional impact behind this is crucial and incredibly important to them. The only thing that I do kind of warn you about is that sometimes ICE appointments can last 30 minutes and other times they can last a good chunk of the day. So be aware of that when you are trying to set your preferences for these types of opportunities. Another one is a court accompaniment. That is very similar to attending an ICE appointment. The only difference is that it is in a court setting. Another way you can help out with accompaniment is through being able to help them with their documents. And what I mean by that is going with them to get their consular appointments. Oftentimes, families come out of detention without any documentation for themselves, namely their passport, their birth certificate, or what have you. Another way to be able to help them is by translating documents. While a family is fighting and claiming asylum here in the United States, they need their criminal reports, medical reports to be translated to be able to prove that they are being persecuted in their home country. And lastly, as Nate was saying in the last slide, that there is a complicated way to be able to change their address if they need to notify the government and its several agencies that they have now moved to another place. And there are some very detrimental consequences if they are not receiving notifications of their court dates or any sort of correspondence from the government. Secondly, another way you can help is by helping out with community resource linking. Making simple referrals or having just giving them a phone number isn't quite enough for an immigrant family. And I mean that by saying that it is quite difficult for an immigrant family to get enrolled into a program due to eligibility. And by eligibility, I mean that it is very hard because they are not traditionally being able to prove their residence or proving their source of income. By residence, I mean that their lease, for the most part, doesn't have a name, or they don't necessarily even have a lease, but they're just renting out a room informally with a friend. And so oftentimes even that friend is also undocumented and doesn't want to have their name attached to any document just for the fact that it might be connected to the government at some point. And income, because when they are immediately released, asylum-seeking families do not have a worker's permit, so being able to not work, you do have an unsteady source of income. So where you can come in is help and advocate for them to be enrolled into programs for medical assistance, food banks, clothing assistance. That's especially important when you are up in the northern states or cold states, considering the fact that most of the time they have fled their country and they do not have time to pack for all seasons. And so that is where you can come in to help advocate and also show that alternative forms of identification and residences will be extremely helpful to get them enrolled into programs. And lastly, you can help them plan for the inevitable. Most of the time, this should be done in a confidential and secure place. And I mean that because what you can help them do is help them plan for an emergency for if an unforeseeable event happens, if they get deported, what will happen with childcare, and also if other events such as domestic violence happens, how you can help them just begin that thought process and have a written out plan. And because that will be considered a touchy subject if for some people, especially with those that do not have a sort of social work background or what have you. There will be training modules that we could equip you guys before you go out and do any of these volunteer opportunities. And so one of the biggest problems that immigrant families actually face is transportation. They are scared to ride public transit. They are also not aware of how it could be, and sometimes they may not even be able to read the signs around them to be able to know what a bus stop looks like or what it doesn't. So another alternative that you can do is help them plan on how they can get transported from place to place, and that's by teaching them how to use the public transit in your local community. And lastly, it sounds very weird, but you can definitely help them by helping them find the nearest internet connection or Wi-Fi hotspot. How is that crucial? It's because they run out of their minutes on their phone and they can't pay their phone bill all the time. So how can we help them is help them find the nearest grocery store that has free Wi-Fi or the closest fast food or library. That is something essential because they can also still keep in contact with their social worker, with their lawyer, or just with notifying that they are out of minutes and yet not out of touch. And so as you do this, we definitely do, as we said, we will equip you with all of the training materials that you can before you are able to be linked with an asylum-seeking family. Remember that if you are not certified, please refer to professionals. And we can always help you find resources as well. If you are making that responsibility to be connected to a family and help them out on a certain day, keep your word and be reliable, or let the organization that you are linking the client with know in advance so they are not waiting there. And then also to create a community. We want to empower clients and not necessarily have them create a dependency on it. And as I've stated, materials will be sent to you to be able to best serve these families. And so alternatively, the other opportunities outside of a social service or the opportunities listed in the previous slide, there are other opportunities. One being hosting a fundraiser for the Family Detention Fund. Sometimes that could be a profit share with a restaurant, or it could be just your own personal fundraiser. As we've seen, sometimes Facebook donation pages go viral, as we've seen within our own organization. The other one is the Carnes Pro Bono Project. Most of the time they need pro bono attorneys and or social workers to be able to help out. Please reach out to Jillian Severinsky at RAICESTexas.org. And so here are the next steps. Number one, sign up for email updates via Action Network and RAICES. Or you can email volunteer@raicestexas.org. Probably the best way to do it is go through Action Network, RAICES, and be in our listserv. Second step, after this presentation, we will be sending you an email where it will have a sign-up sheet or a link to a sign-up sheet that you can now set your preferences, and what we can do is eventually link you up with a family. And then also, alternatively, if you feel the need to really get active immediately, please contact your local immigrant rights organization and get involved. And so I do want to caution everyone here, these types of volunteer opportunities aren't traditional in the sense of a food bank where you can go between 3 and 5 every Tuesday. This is catered to families, and it is a very crucial and scary time for them. But at the same time, please be patient with us, because these types of opportunities, as you can see, are very catered to the family, and it is not a scheduled event that we can link you up with someone immediately. This is your commitment to us is also where we will know that we can rely on you when we find a situation that arises for a family down in Atlanta, in December of this year. So please be patient with us, and we completely are so grateful and thankful for your support and wanting to be here. It is completely empowering for us to be able to see so much support for our clients. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email me, Miriam Gamero at RAICESTexas.org, or my colleague Nate Roeder at raicestexas.org. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has an amazing Thursday.